Today we're making a more natural mozzarella with absolutely no citric acid. We're not just going to show you the recipe, we're also going to talk to you a little bit about the science behind mozzarella and why you might want to do it this way instead of adding citric acid. But if the science part isn't what you're into, make sure to check out the timestamps down in the description and skip right over to the recipe.
There's two things that make a good mozzarella: texture and taste, and the modern additive of citric acid sacrifices them both. Citric acid's job here is through a process called chelation. That's just a scientific name for acting like a strong binder or grabber that latches onto the calcium into the milk. It holds tight, helps more of the calcium get washed out into the whey, leaving less glue to hold the proteins firm. That's why the curd gets nice and pliable for that gooey stretch. This sounds great, but there's a real downside to adding citric acid. Because more of the calcium gets washed out, the cheese ends up with a less natural structure, that glue that gives the firmness and creaminess. For texture, it can turn rubbery, bouncy, or overly soft instead of that silky, tender bite you want from fresh mozzarella. Then there's the taste, which is left flat and one-dimensional. Citric acid skips that slow magic of good bacteria fermenting the milk over hours. No subtle tang, no layers of depth, none of those fermented notes that make mozzarella taste bright, fresh, and alive. While cultured mozzarella builds real complexity and is satisfying and feels like an honor worthy of the title, truly homemade. And on the health side, slow fermentation breaks down more lactose, making it easier to digest, leaves behind live probiotics that support your gut, and keeps more of the milk's natural calcium and minerals locked into the cheese for better nutrients. Citric acid gives you speed, but it trades away some of the probiotic boost and some of the wholesome mineral profile we value on our homesteads. Now that I've hopefully convinced you to be citric acid free, let's get into the recipe. Let's go. Bacteria culture. Now we get a little funky over here on our homestead and we use Kefir culture. This is what allows us to acidify our cheese without the help of citric acid. Have no fear, you don't need to use Kefir. What's up with all this rhyming? Those little cheese cultures you get from the store will still work for this recipe and will acidify your cheese without citric acid in exactly the same way. Both ways naturally lower the pH through bacteria, not citric acid, keeping more of the calcium in the cheese for way better structure, meaning no more rubbery texture and way more melting cheese. Way better than the quick method. If you're curious about cheese making more in depth and using Kefir inside of any type of cheese pretty much, check out David Asher's books. Highly recommend. And now, the best darn mozzarella you've ever made. This is my heavy bottom 5-gallon pot. Good cheese making gets a whole lot easier with one of these because the thick base spreads heat nice and even. No hot spots scorching your milk on the bottom while the top's still cool. That means gentler, more consistent heating as we bring the milk up to the temperature.
I want to tell you a little bit about my pot. So this is a 5-gallon stainless steel pot and it's a heavy bottom. I love that it's a heavy bottom pot because it doesn't scorch the milk on the bottom and it really keeps the heat. Milk in general actually does keep its heat very, very well, almost to a fault. There have been a few times where I heated it too much and it did not cool down. So a good pot is worth its weight in gold.
We load up our pot with 5 gallons of skim milk. This allows us to get 2 products for the price of 1 major batch. We scoop off the cream to make butter, and then we save the skim milk to make wonderful mozzarella. You'll get a better quality mozzarella and more yield if you leave the cream in, but this is a great way to get 2 products for your time spent making the cheese.
And this is my portion of cream, so I'm gonna go put it in the fridge to chill to make some butter later.
Now we add our 5 gallons to the pot, turn on the heat, and slowly bring our milk to 95 degrees.
Slow heat is important here, so it usually takes my 5-gallon pot about an hour to get to temperature. So you don't have to set a timer, but I usually have very busy mornings where I'm balancing a lot of things all at once. So setting a timer to remind me to stir as I'm warming it to 95 degrees is incredibly helpful.
If you accidentally go above the target temperature, a good remedy is just stirring in some cold milk. Milk has a high specific heat capacity. This means that it holds onto its heat for a very long time, so it's way more efficient just to stir in some cold milk. And now that we're at our target temperature of 95 degrees, we turn off the heat and start preparing our culture. If you're using the bacteria packet cultures that you buy from the store, you can add those now and wait 30 minutes. But since we use a more natural bacteria, let me show you what we do with kefir. And hopefully, you'll decide to do this too. We take our active kefir, think about it like a fed sourdough. There's a key reason why we have to strain it through a jar. Kefir is cultured milk, and it's cultured by these grains. These grains need to be saved for the next batch of kefir. So we take our grains, put them in a new jar, replenish them with new milk, and then set them off to the side to culture for a new day. Let me make this clear to get rid of any confusion. The grains never go in the cheese. They always are there merely to culture your fresh milk. Those go off to the side and do not get added to the cheese. Very important. Any kefir that we're going to be using is the pre-cultured milk that has no grains in it. Let's move on. This is now where we take our cultured kefir and add it to our warmed milk. We add 2/3 cups for 5 gallons of milk, but to make it easy for you, it's about 1/8 cup per gallon. Now, if you pay attention closely, there's actually somewhat of a special way to stir. That's basically scooping up from the bottom, stirring around, zigzagging. Since these are living bacteria, you just want to make sure that it's fully incorporated throughout the entire milk, and let that stir in for about 20 seconds. And now it's time to add the rennet, and if you're looking for a trustworthy rennet, North Mountain Rennet is where it's at. I hesitate on giving you the exact measurement for rennet that we put in ours, because not all rennet is the same, so make sure you're checking your package of your rennet to know exactly how much to put in. In our case, we put a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon, and with all rennet, it needs to be diluted in water before added. And without waiting any more time, we can take that rennet and add it to the milk, stirring very carefully for 25 seconds. Any fast movement risks the curd setting way too quick. Then we leave the milk to settle for 45 minutes, then come back and see if the curd set. If it didn't set, then we set another 15-minute timer just to check and let it settle a little bit longer. And with that clean break, we can immediately go into cutting the curd. And then a little pro tip, cut from the center and then move outward. Then start cutting from the center and move toward the other direction. If not, the curd starts to spin while you cut it. This just gets rid of any annoyance and makes things flow a lot nicer. The next part is to also undercut the curd. Our aim is to get everything about walnut size. Don't stress about making them perfect. We'll fine-tune the size and consistency in the next step. Okay, so here's the thing. To really fine-tune the size and consistency, we roll up our sleeves and get our arms into the pot and break up the curd by hand. There's a super important reason for this. These gentle hand breaks create a more tender and even texture for the mozzarella by letting the curds release whey gradually and meld together without getting overworked or mashed mechanically. Plus, it's a way better way to feel how the curds develop, how firm, how springy, how it responds after sitting in the whey. And building the hands-on intuition is gold, not just for mozzarella, but for getting better at any cheese you make down the road. So we will go on and do this gentle hand stirring and size verification for about 10 minutes. Now we put the lid on our pot and let the curds do their thing. The curds' job right now is to just knit together. What this means is that all the curds that we spent breaking up and stirring around by hand are now going to be settling at the bottom. And as they settle, they're literally going to stitch together, making one solid mass of cheese. And now we go on with our day and let the cheese naturally acidify on its own. This process could take somewhere close to 4 hours. And this may seem long, but you're not touching it. It's just sitting there. You see, this is the key step to that perfect stretch. The milk is acidifying because of that natural bacteria that we added earlier. Those friendly lactic acid bacteria that we added from the kefir or that starter culture starts multiplying and fermenting the lactose found in the milk, which is the natural sugar found in milk. It takes this lactose and turns it into lactic acid. As the lactic acid builds up, it drops the pH of the milk and the curd naturally over time. It builds that more complex flavor, sets up the right protein structure for the stretch later, and unlocking all those probiotic and mineral benefits that we talked about earlier. No shortcuts, just good old bacterial magic. Now, after waiting 4 hours, we need to heat up water so that we can test the pH. We don't need any fancy equipment for this either, which is really awesome. It's just the stretch test. Mozzarella needs to be at a 5.2 to 5.3 pH in order to get a good stretch, but really that doesn't mean anything to you because all we're going to do is test it by stretching it. We test that by putting a small portion of cheese in hot water. We wait 2 minutes, stick a fork in it, and raise it out of the water. If it stretches, you're good to go. If it doesn't stretch, it needs more time, and if it stretches a little but breaks, you've gone too far. Ideally, this could take from 4 to 6 hours to hit the right range. You'll know your sweet spot after the first few batches, which will make that timing much easier overall. If it doesn't stretch at all, give it about an hour. If you're starting to get some stretch, come back every 15 to 30 minutes to make sure that you're there. And now that we're at the proper pH and the stretch is perfect, we can now start to stretch the entire batch. From this point, I drain out most of the whey from the pot. This ensures that I can heat up this whey so much faster. But I'm making sure I save some of that unheated whey for both storage and cooling the mozzarella balls down. Mozzarella maintains that freshness and moistness if it's stored in its own whey. The whey can also be salted to add flavor for later. Keeping that curd covered in the whey, I bring the heat up in the pot. I think generally it's supposed to be about 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, but I don't care about that at all. I just check to see when it starts to stretch. And as we're approaching that temperature, I'm making sure to flip the curd a few times to make sure that the surface area on both sides is getting evenly heated. I'll then rip it up with my hands, kind of pre-sizing the mozzarella balls, just to ensure that everything's getting evenly heated. For this next part, I don't like to use rubber gloves. I feel like they leave a little bit of rubbery taste on the mozzarella, and that's something I don't want at all. So to make it easier, I like to use a spoon to scoop out those pre-ripped up curds. Then from here, I stretch and fold until that surface is silky smooth. I'll keep doing this until every single one is done. And all these mozzarella balls get stored in its cooler whey with salt in order to keep its shape and silkiness. Now with the kefir, this process becomes regenerative and easy. I don't need to make trips to the store or order citric acid online. Nearly everything can be done in-house except for the rennet. I've made a complete guide on how to manage and start your own kefir at home. Check out that video right here at the end, and I'll see you over there.